First, make sure you go through your SOP and that you can answer any and all questions that they could ask about it. So there's usually a bit of a gap between when you apply and when you go into the interview, so you may have forgotten what you wrote about. Just make sure you review it and that you can answer their questions and have a few talking points. Some of the questions that they could ask are things like, why do you want to go to Japan? What about Japanese culture interests you? What makes you a good candidate? Why the JET program? Why not something else? Just make sure that you review it and that you can answer it. Once you've prepared your SOP, the next thing you need to prepare are what I call HR questions, because in a job interview, it's what HR usually asks you. A very common question is, tell me about yourself, or introduce yourself to us. Something like that. Now, you can just answer by telling them about yourself, giving a brief history of your life and where you are now. But if you find a strategic way to answer this question, you can really set up the entire interview to be successful. What I suggest is first introduce your name, what they can call you if you have a nickname, and then go into your current role where you are now. Mention any sort of projects or tasks that you've had that are relevant to the JET program or to teaching, and then work backward through your resume or your CV. So your current position, the one before that, the one before that, give a brief nugget of information on each one. And make sure that the bit of information you're giving about that role is something you've already prepared to talk more about, so that they can pick up on those little bits of information you've given, ask questions, and then you can give a really good and well-prepared answer and really ace the interview. So yes, start with your current position, work backwards, talk about your degree and where you got it, and then after that you can talk about personal hobbies, anything you're interested in, especially if it has to do with Japan or some sort of cultural exchange. It can also just be sport you like to do, maybe there's volunteer activities you do, then you can mention those there. So the reason this answer is strategic is it kind of gives the interviewers a structure that they can follow to ask you questions about for the interview based on the little bits of information you've given them. And it just gives you a really good foundation to start the interview from. So really practice your tell me about yourself answer and make it as strategic as you can. This is not the time to be humble. I know it's a bit awkward, but try and sell yourself as much as you can. If you have achievements, list them. Don't hide them. Just make sure they know what makes you a good candidate and that you've put your best foot forward. Moving on from that, they may ask some behavioral questions. They don't always. My recommended way to answer a behavioral question is to use the STAR method. It's situation, task, action, result. It's quite well documented. There's so many videos on how to use it really well, so you can go look it up and prepare maybe 1 or 2 answers for behavioral questions. The STAR method, as an interviewer in the past, it's perfect. It always works, and you're going to knock it out of the park if you use the STAR method for behavioral questions. So the next thing to prepare is your Japanese language ability. If you've put that you've had any amount of Japanese language ability in your application or your SOP, they will test it. So make sure you can answer a few questions at the level of your ability that you've put. If you haven't put any Japanese language ability, then they're not going to ask you about it. They may ask you maybe, how do you plan to communicate, or how do you plan to learn the language? And you can just prepare an answer for that. They will ask you about your placements, and unless you have a really solid reason for why you put down your placements, most likely you're not going to get the placements you put. I put the big 3 cities because I hadn't been to Japan and I didn't know that much about Japan before I went. And I got put in Tohoku, in one of the most rural cities in Japan, the prefecture that even Japanese people don't visit and don't see the point in visiting. And I still had an amazing time. I've even met a Jet who got a placement in Kyoto, and for his preference, he put Hokkaido. So they really don't take it into account. And it's important to mention any strong points, but if you don't have a strong reason for being in a prefecture, you probably won't get it. And there's nothing wrong with that. You're still going to enjoy your time. They may ask you questions about teaching. Unless they've told you before the interview to specifically prepare a demo lesson, and that does happen in some consulates, they don't actually expect a full lesson plan. So they may ask you something like, if you had to teach the children a certain grammar point in this level of class, how would you teach it? How would you make it fun? And you can just have a few ideas about how you would do a warm-up, maybe how you would do the thing and make it fun, an activity, and then like a closing. They also asked me, how am I going to share my culture and my heritage in the classroom and in the Japanese community? So in the classroom, I already had a lesson idea around Heritage Day, which we have in South Africa. So I spoke about that. For the community, I actually did want to volunteer. And so I told them about the kind of work I wanted to do in Japan when I got there with the community. So have something prepared for that. I think a lot of people overestimate how much Japanese people know about your country. So even if you come from the UK or the US or Australia, there's still so many aspects of the culture that Japanese people don't understand or don't have access to learn about. So whatever your cultural background, there is something that you can share. So just find something interesting about like your state or your province or your country and have a few ideas around that. Other than that, there's general questions. They did ask me what is going on in Japan now. Did you read any news recently about Japan? So make sure to keep updated on what's happening in the country and to know your facts about Japan. So if you prepare those things, you should be golden. Now I want to talk about something that happened in my interview, and I heard about it happening in other people's interviews in other countries as well. It's not everyone, but it does happen. I'm not sure how they choose who they want to do this to, but they do. Basically, just firstly know that the reason you're in an interview is because they really like you and they want to send you to Japan. So they're testing you to make sure that you can do well if they do send you. And one of the things that can happen is there will be someone in the interview who's going to be a bit difficult, and it's by design. So they may interrogate your answers. They may be a little rude or a little less polite in the way they ask questions or the way they respond to your answers. Firstly, I think the reason they do this is just to test if you're good under pressure and if you can manage stress. Because even if Japan is your dream and you've done all your research about the JET program, you have Japanese friends, you've been to Japan, all of that, being an ALT is still going to be stressful, especially because you're navigating a new work environment, you're navigating a new country. They're just trying to see if you can manage that. They want you to be successful when you go. I think that's why they do this. My tip is just remain calm. Don't take it personally. They're doing it because they want you to succeed. And then answer the questions from this person as honestly and as calmly as you can, and that should be good, and they should soften up after that. At the end of the interview, at the end of every interview, they will always ask, do you have any questions for us? And the worst answer you can give in that question is to say no. Literally any question you ask is going to be good. I would say a rule of thumb is to ask at least 2 questions that are insightful, not just yes or no questions. Some examples of what you can ask, there's someone there who was a previous ALT. So you can ask them about their time in Japan, maybe culture shock. You can ask the person who's Japanese about Japanese culture as well, about the language. How would they recommend you learn the language if you don't know the language? If you want to improve your language skills, how do they think you can do that while you're in Japan? You can even ask them things like, what makes a good ALT to you? What would I need to do to be successful in the JET program? How can I maximize my experience in Japan when I'm there? Things like that. And then, if you're feeling calm and confident enough, you don't have to ask what you prepared. Any questions that could come up naturally during the interview, you can ask them that too. I think the thing to remember is, as much as you really, really want to get in, and they want you to get in as well, it's also a chance for you to test that this role is right for you and that you're going to do well in the JET program. It's a big life-changing decision, and you don't want to go into it unprepared. And you're not going to have this opportunity again where you have someone who's Japanese, someone who's from the embassy, and someone who has been on JET, where they're all in the room with you and you have their 100% focused attention. You can ask them whatever you want. So anything you've been worried about, anything you really want to know about, you can ask. So have at least 2 questions, but ask as many as you want. Don't go over the interview time. So that's the interview. If you follow these tips, I think you're going to ace it. Now I want to talk about general interview tips. And if you follow these, you're going to set a very good impression other than just being prepared for the interview. Firstly, it's going to be a panel interview. So there's someone who was on JET before, someone from the consulate or the embassy, and usually a Japanese educator or an academic, or they could also be a Japanese person who works at the embassy. That's the minimum panel you can get. You can get more people. They will take turns asking questions, but make sure you make eye contact with everyone while you're answering. So how should you dress? As formal as you can get is best. If you have a suit, wear a suit. And you don't need to be overly conservative. The point of dressing well for an interview is not to hide who you are. If you have certain things that you love, maybe you love colorful makeup, maybe you have beautiful colorful hair, maybe you have certain jewelry that you really adore and you want to wear, or there's colors that you love to wear, like bright colors. Don't hide that. Wear that. Do it professionally and formally, but wear those. The point of dressing well in an interview, I think a lot of people take issue with it because they say, I don't dress like this every day. I want to show who I am. I don't want to hide my individuality. But that's not the purpose of it. The reason you dress well is to show the people that you're meeting with that you have respect for them, that you respect the time they're giving you, that you're taking this opportunity seriously enough to dress formally and to dress your best. And it just communicates without speaking that you are professional, that you're grounded, that you're respectful, and that you're here for the opportunity. So it's really an excellent way for you to introduce yourself without having to say anything. So the better you dress and the more appropriate it is for the job, then the better your first impression is going to come across, and the whole interview is going to go really well. Aside from that, be friendly. You should always be friendly and polite to people in life anyway, but be on your best behavior from when you enter the building to when you leave. If you're doing it in person, make sure you're on time. They may give you a guideline for how early they want you to be, but if they don't, a general rule of thumb is about 10 to 15 minutes before the interview time, you should be there waiting. And then if they ask you if you want something to drink, you should say yes, and you should ask for water at the bare minimum. That's what I always ask for. It's nice to have a glass of water next to you when you're talking a lot in an interview. And then if it's normal for you guys in your country, shake hands. And then if you're feeling nervous, I have a breathing technique you can use. Basically, you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and then leave your lungs without air for 4 seconds. So you can do that 2 or 3 times. What it does is it really brings your heart rate down, and then that helps your body calm down. Don't do it too many times because you can feel a bit dizzy and lightheaded from the lack of oxygen. So just do it a few times until your pulse rate comes down, and then you should feel calm and collected and ready to ace this interview. That's about it. At the end of the interview, make sure to thank them for the opportunity and for their time. Tell them you're looking forward to hearing from them, and then you can leave the interview room. And I just want to say, it is really stressful. I know it was stressful for me too. I think any interview is stressful, especially if you really, really, really want the position. And all you can do is prepare as well as you can. So the fact that you're here and you're reviewing questions and preparing for the interview, you are already doing as much as you can do to put yourself in the best standing for getting the job. The rest is up to them, and you can't control it. And if you don't get it, don't be discouraged. Learn for the next time. I know a lot of people who got in on their second or third try for JET, especially if you're at an embassy where it's very competitive. You may not get it the first time. Don't let that discourage you or hold you back. Try and learn from any mistakes you feel you made, any feedback they may have given you on why you didn't get it, and then apply again next year if you still want to go, and you may get it. And if not, apply again the next year and you may get it. Just make sure that when you walk out of that interview room, you know you've done everything you could do, and you feel good and confident about how the interview went. So prepare as much as you need to make sure you get that result. Good luck. I wish you the absolute best. I hope you guys do well. If you have questions, you can ask in the comments, and just be kind to yourself. Have a good interview, have fun with it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.